Hi guys, this is Rich with Wild Wonderful Weekends, and today I want to show you how I price my private drone work and a tool I use to help me automate that process so I can give my clients fast and accurate quotes and keep my business profitable. It's a tremendous help to me and I think it can help you too. I'll put a link to it in the description. Now in my last video I made on how to make money with your drone, I showed you a tool that can help you check the profitability of gig work, but this is different. This is for people who are starting or operating their own drone business and they want a streamlined or more accurate way to price their work. This video is broken down into 3 short sections, with each section having a link in the description. And the first one is basically going to show you how to configure this tool to your own business. It's really a one-time setup and you'll rarely have to modify it. And in the second section, I'm going to show you how to use the tool then to generate a quote for your clients in a matter of seconds. And in the last section, I'll show you how this tool can even help guide your tech purchases so you're really streamlined and profitable without too much overhead. Let me show you how it works. There are basically 3 main things you absolutely have to consider when pricing your work. How much time is it going to take to complete the job from planning all the way to delivery of assets to your client? How much you should reinvest in your business to keep you operational? And what expenses are associated with completing the job? Things like gas, food, lodging, and project insurance. The tool that I'm going to show you makes it a snap to factor in all those things to give you an accurate price to quote to your client. The very first time you open the tool, it'll be a blank slate and you'll need to fill in some information about your operation to configure it. But once that's done, you'll be able to generate a quote in a matter of seconds. Let's start on the Business Costs tab. The first section at the top left of this page is where you'll list your depreciable assets and their values. This is any equipment you use in your drone work that depreciates over time. So for me, I would list my Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced, which I have roughly $7,000 in with the RTK module, extra batteries, props, and extra chargers. My Phantom 4 Pro V2, which I have about $1,200 in. My Mavic Mini 2 that I have about $500 in. My DSLR that I have about $1,200 in. And my 360 camera at about $400. You want to be sure to list the amount the equipment was worth when it was new, and I'll show you why shortly. Notice some of the cells on this sheet are color-filled. These cells contain formulas or titles and should not be typed into directly. The only time you would want to modify one of these cells is if you're changing the way the tool functions to meet a specific need that you have. The cells with white backgrounds are the ones we'll enter our information into. And it'll be that way on each tab of this tool. We only want to type in the cells with white backgrounds. You can ignore this error for right now. It'll go away as soon as we provide more information. Next, we have our annual advertising costs. For this, let's say $1,000. And last, we have our insurance. Now, there's a lot of ways to handle insurance in drone work. You can have a monthly fee, an annual fee, or you can buy drone insurance per project, and any combination in between. So I provided a couple ways to handle it in the tool. This cell is for any standing insurance policy you carry for your business. I'll put $250 here as an example. Yours may be $500 or $1,000 or blank. Now we come up to our target missions per week. This is how many missions you realistically expect to average per week. I'm going to plug the number 2 in as a start. Any of these values and items can be changed at any time to more accurately reflect your real numbers. These are only starter values to demonstrate the tool. Now we come to target reinvestment time. Hardware eventually needs repaired or replaced, and software quickly becomes outdated. So everything you listed here will eventually need to be replaced. This value is basically how long you expect to get productive use out of your tech before wanting or needing to upgrade. For me, I find that 3 years is about the right number, because in that time it's likely that something will come out that can give your competitors a bit of an advantage if you don't keep pace. Now you'll notice our formulas no longer have errors, and we see that for a 3-year return on investment for our tech, flying 2 missions per week, we would need to reinvest $33.01 for each mission we fly in order to keep our gear up to date. And for our advertisement costs, flying 2 missions per week, we would need to reinvest $9.62 per mission. And for insurance, the split would be $240. So just by plugging these numbers in, we start to get a clearer picture of what we should be reinvesting in our business, and all of this is going to get automatically factored into our quotes without us having to think about it every time. And we can come back and modify this information at any time if something needs adjusted. For instance, if I see I'm getting closer to 3 missions per week, I can change that. and you see the numbers update accordingly. Okay, I'm going to switch this back to 2 and move on to the rate sheet. And here again, the colored cells have titles and formulas and should be left as they are. I break down drone work into 3 main parts: planning, execution, and processing. The reason I do this is because if I contract someone to fly a mission or process images and video for me, it helps me to know what I should charge for that separate aspect of the job, so I can balance what I pay my contractor versus what I charge my client. Under mission planning, which includes getting authorization, surveying an area of operation using Google Maps or Google Earth, and planning your flight, you'll plug in how much you want to charge an hour for this aspect of the job. I'll say $35 an hour. Then we go down to mission execution, which includes on-site surveying, adjusting the mission plan, data capture, and data confirmation before leaving the site. And for this work, I'll say I want to charge $50 an hour. Again, these are just example numbers. I'm not saying this is what I actually charge. You'll have to see what the market will bear in your area. And finally, I'm going to do the same thing with processing. And for this, I'll say $30 an hour. Next, we move to the hourly charges for assets. I basically think of it in terms of rental use of equipment. First here is visual observer. So we'll say for a VO, we'll charge $20 an hour. And if I need an independent camera operator or second drone operator using equipment that I own, I'll charge $25 an hour. Below those 2 items, you see that everything listed here is automatically copied over from the business costs tab, and a formula is applied to calculate an hourly rental fee. If we go back to the business costs tab and add an item, like a Matrice 30T for $14,000, we see that it updates on the rate sheet. Now, under software, I'll list the software that I would typically use to process maps, models, images, and videos. I'll put Maps Made Easy, and per project I would charge, say, $20. Next, I'll enter Measure Ground Control with a per project charge of $40. Then Drone Deploy at $100, and finally Pix 4D Scan and Inspect for $60 per project. Then the last 2 bits of info we need to enter to make this tool ready for use is our mileage charge, and at the time I made this video, the standard IRS mileage rate is 28 cents per mile, and the average speed I travel to and from drone jobs. Since I typically travel through an even mix of interstate and country highways, I'm going to enter 55 here. Okay, now we're ready to use the tool to generate a quote. I select the pricing tab and you'll immediately notice that it's no longer a blank slate. Much of the information we entered in the configuration tab's business costs and rate sheet have carried over into the pricing tab. And since the info in the configuration tabs rarely change, this is the sheet you'll use the most. And here's how it works. Let's say I've spoken with a client through a Zoom meeting and they've told me that they want some basic photos and videos of a commercial property they want to put on the market. We've looked at the area together on Google Maps and they've confirmed exactly the property of interest. After our chat, I have a pretty good understanding of what the job will entail, where the mission site is located, and what the deliverables will be. So I can plug in a few details and get my quote. I'll start under the mission, crew, hardware, and software section. Since the property is fairly large, I will use 1 visual observer, and I put that here. I won't need an extra drone or camera operator, so I can enter 0 here or leave it blank. Blanks count as zeros in this tool. Since I'm not capturing thermal data, I won't need to use my Mavic 2 Enterprise, but I will use my Phantom 4 Pro. If this was a larger operation, I could enter the number 2 here and I could say that I want an operator, but I will keep it at just 1 VO and my Phantom. The only other asset I would need for this project would be my DSLR for some ground photos. I won't be creating any maps or models for this job, so I won't check any of the software here. Now, under the Mission Time and Expenses section, we see Mission Planning. Since this is a pretty straightforward job, I'm going to put about half an hour. Executing the mission should only take about an hour, but to be safe, I'll put an hour and a half. And processing the images and videos should only take about an hour since I wouldn't be doing anything too involved. Let's say the job is only about 6 miles from my home, and since the job is so close, I won't be eating out or needing lodging. And finally, I'm not buying any extra insurance for this job. Now you can see that all the formulas have been calculated and everything rolls up under the next section, Mission Profitability. Right at the top we have the total amount to charge, and this is what we would quote our client. Just below that we have our breakouts for business costs, including what we need to set aside for depreciable assets, advertisement, and insurance. And below that, we have what our net profit would be once it considers our cost of business splits, what we're paying our VO, what we're spending on food and lodging, and software. So for this job, it has us netting $103.33. And when it considers how much time it would take us to complete the job, planning, executing, processing, and traveling, we would be earning the equivalent of $32.11 an hour. It's that easy. Now that we have our cost of business info entered and our rate sheet info entered, all we have to do is plug in numbers into the pricing sheet to get our quote. So let's try this once more and say instead of a simple commercial real estate job, it was a visual and thermal mapping job of the roof of a strip mall. This job would also require one visual observer, but this time I would have to fly using my Mavic 2 Enterprise Advanced instead of the Phantom. And I would need to process the data in either drone deploy or measure ground control. For this example, I'll select measure ground control. Planning would be a bit more involved, so let's say it would take an hour. I'll leave mission execution time at an hour and a half. And processing would basically just be an upload to measure ground control, so I'll leave that at half an hour. Let's say this job was 20 miles from my home, and I'll spend $10 on food. This puts the amount that I would need to quote the client at $281.83. My net profit becomes $156.79, and my equivalent hourly rate of pay would be $42.07. This tool helps me get quotes to my clients in a snap, and it helps me take everything into consideration without having to always think about it. Once the business cost info is entered and the rate sheet info is entered, everything else is a breeze. So now let me show you what I meant by using this tool to guide your tech investments to make you more profitable and more competitive. Let's go back to our business costs tab and put the Matrice 30T back on the list of assets at $14,000. With all our other data points remaining the same, our depreciable asset split jumps to $77.88. So if we went back to our original scenario of shooting a basic commercial real estate job, and we used a Phantom 4 Pro to shoot it, since I have so much expensive tech to be doing such relatively low-paying work, my net profit and equivalent hourly rate drops substantially. Now you could say, no problem, I'll just use my Matrice for everything. But that will bump up your quote amount and probably put you way above what someone else can do the job for and deliver results the client would be more than happy with. So as you start getting work, pay attention to what's bringing in the most money for you. If it isn't large industrial projects, you might be far better off using a Mavic 2 or 3 Pro instead of a much more expensive drone. Also, if you're thinking about adding a new drone to your fleet, you can add it to the tool first and run some common work scenarios and test out your profitability using your new drone. It's an easy way to kind of preview things and figure out what you want to keep and what you may want to sell. So that's it. This tool is a major time saver for me, and it helps keep my business in the black, and I hope it can be useful to you too. Thanks for watching, and don't forget, if you enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe. Take care.